10 a.m. after Sunday Mass. They took the holy body and the precious true blood of Jesus, and they rest in peace. 25 innocent souls have gone to heaven, and 53 more are injured, most of them women and children. We used to have a bombing outside and nearby the church, but although it's the first time to have a bomb inside the church, we will stick to God's word and promises. Jesus said, "Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." They are the wheat that falls to be witnesses for Jesus. So be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you.
Discuss politics. We often discuss the world of politics and how it affects us. However, sometimes we do use this show to talk about how that world and the world around us sometimes affects us negatively. Today, we're here with you live from Sydney, Australia, to talk about the events that have happened in Cairo over the last couple of days, to talk about how it affects the youth in general, how it affects Copts in general, how it affects Egyptians, how it affects humanity. With me today on the show, I have Mena Goubran, one of the youth from Sydney. Welcome, Mena.
Thank you, Kevin.
We also have Mark Tadros, also one of the youth from Sydney. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
So we're discussing, as you all know, the events that have happened with regards to the terror attack on the Coptic Church of St. Peter in El Abbasiyya in Cairo. This event happened when Christians are usually at their most sacred space, inside a church. It happened during the Holy Liturgy, the holiest of events, or the holiest of sacraments that we have, where we partake, as you just heard, from the body and blood of Christ. This has caused a great shock to all Copts worldwide. And we're here today to discuss it, to talk about it, because talking about things does heal wounds. We're here today to also see where to from here and how we can move on. Just to start with, if I can please ask you to, if you would like to join the conversation on today's show, to please call in. The number is +61 for Australia, 02 8197 1292. The number again, 02 81971 CYC, 81971 292. So let's start off, Mena. I know you are politically inclined. Can you tell us, please, what happened? What actually happened beyond, what we've heard, which is that there was a bombing at one of the churches?
Well, again, beyond what we've heard, we've got to also. I guess we have to look at the events as an iceberg. So you've got what you've seen at the top, but also what we can't see, which is at the bottom, and that is the fact that within hours of the attack, we had the blessing of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the President of Egypt, really at our side, really a great ally to the church, telling us who the perpetrators were. And again, what a lot of people see, or may not see, is there's a big contrast there. And so if we were to, I guess, look at it in terms of an Australian investigation, I've seen quite a few of those take place. These things can take months, weeks. It can take a lot of time to get to a name. But Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was able to cut through a lot of the red tape because he knew that we needed some closure, and that was from a political angle what I saw that took place, and very, very grateful to him for that.
Thank you, Mena. Dear viewers, we have on the line with us His Grace Bishop Daniel, Bishop of the Diocese of Sydney and its affiliated regions. Your Grace Bishop Daniel, welcome to CYC.
Thank you very much for having me in CYC.
Thank you, Sayyidina. Your Grace, our condolences to you, our condolences to the Church on this tragic loss and this horrifying attack that's taken place.
Thank you for your condolences, really appreciate it very much. And we trust in the love of God in these circumstances.
Thank you, Your Grace. Your Grace, can you please tell us what's been the general reaction that you've experienced here in Australia?
Okay, what we did, we had a meeting with the Reverend Father and the lay people, and we decided to do four things. One, to do the vigil prayer today in Australia. Today is Tuesday, 13th of December. So we are here in the church from 4 p.m. till 11 p.m. And we decided also to dedicate 3 days of praying masses for the soul, repose of the souls of our great martyrs in St. Peter and St. Paul Church in Botrosia near the great cathedral. And then we decided also today a day of prayer in the 21st of January in the Martin Place in the heart of the city of Sydney, so that we can join all the Australians together to pray with us, sharing the memorial, the 40 days memorial of our precious martyrs. This is what we agreed upon, and now we are going to do the last part of the vigil prayer, which is a midnight tasbihah.
Thank you, Your Grace, and thank you for taking time out from your program for that. Your Grace, if I can just ask, what's been the reaction from the general Australian population, the politicians that you've spoken to, and the media in Australia?
Yeah, thank you for this question. This is a very important question, actually. We accepted the condolences of the politician, and the Prime Minister of Australia called me yesterday, 5:45 p.m. Sydney time, and expressed his sincere condolences for Pope Tadros, Bishop Suriel, Bishop Daniel, my weak self, and for the entire congregation of the Coptic Church. And then he assured us with his support and with his sympathy, deep sympathy for our martyrs. And he said, this is what we know about the history of the great ancient church, the Coptic Orthodox Church. And in the phone call, the Vicar General, Father Tadros, was with me. And we thank the Prime Minister for this initiative also. Today, the opposition leader of New South Wales, Luke for you, came, and the assistant Linda of the opposition leader federal level, Linda, came, and also the government came, representing by many politicians, and all of them came. And Ambassador Mohammed Khairat and Ambassador Yusuf Mohammed Khairat, the Egyptian ambassador of Egypt in Canberra, called me and expressed his condolences, and he said, we are supporting the Coptic Christian Pope Tadros and all the entire Coptic community, as well as at the same time happened with General Consul of Egypt in Sydney and the Ambassador Yusuf Shawi. They all came here to support us, together with the church leaders of our sister churches, the Catholic, the Uniting Church, and the Protestant Church, and the Catholic Church. They all came together, and the Council of the Eastern Bishops in Australia and New Zealand, which consists of 11 church leaders, came at 4 p.m., 3:30 actually, today, and they expressed their condolences, and they said a short prayer, and they wrote their wishes in the memorial book in our church. Now we are praying the midnight prayer, and would like to seek the mercy of God for the families of the martyrs, and we are praying also for the speed healing of the injured 49 persons.
Thank you, Your Grace. Your Grace, if I could just have a couple more minutes of your time. A question that happened the last time. So the last time there was attacks on our churches, there were attacks on our churches in Egypt. There were also threats made on a website about some of our churches here in Sydney. Has anything similar happened, or I guess are our churches here in Sydney and in Australia safe?
Yeah, thanks to God, we are safe here. And we are depending on God's protection. And at the same time, the police here in the government are paying great attention for us and supporting us. In every Sunday we are used to pray.
Thank God. And Sayyidina, what can you say to the youth of Sydney and the youth of Australia and the youth abroad in general? What can you say to them on this sad time?
I would like to say to them 3 points, which concern the future of the evil persons. 1, the house of the evil person will be overthrown. They have no houses. These people who are doing evil things, the Lord will overthrow their houses, as mentioned in the Proverbs chapter 14, verse 11. King Solomon said, the house of the wicked will be overthrown, but the tent of the upright will flourish. And here would like to concentrate in the word tent. We are a stranger in this world. We are living in a tent, despite the fact we are living in houses, but we are in tent. Number 2, the evil and wicked persons will fall by their own wickedness. One time these evildoers, they are going to fall down. As mentioned by King Solomon, Proverbs chapter 11, verse 5. King Solomon said, the righteous of the blameless will direct his way aright, but the wicked will fall by his own wickedness. One day the wicked people will fall down. Yes, their houses will be overthrown and they are going to fall down. But when? This is my third point. We don't know. They are going to do this 100 times. This is not the end of the story of our persecution. I would like to mention the third point, that the days of the evildoer are long and prolonged days. King Solomon said in Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 12, though a sinner does evil 100 times, and his days are prolonged, yet I surely know that I will be well with those. It will be well with those who fear God, who fear before Him. So my message for the youth of Sydney, my message for the entire Coptic Orthodox youth, please put on your heart the fear of God. Put your heart. The fear of God means to be a righteous person, and don't think that all these evildoers is going to gain our church. No, our faith, our love for them is unlimited. And the Lord said, love your enemies. We love them. We are praying for them because they are poor people. This is my main message for the youth. And I would like the youth to be very close to God, coming to the church, praying the Agbiya, praying the Tasbih like what we are doing now. Why? Because our days on earth are few, running quickly, and we don't know when our days is going to finish.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Sorry, I took too long time.
Not at all. Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Grace. It's wonderful to hear from you at this time. And we ask you to please pray for all the youth and pray for those who are suffering at this time. And remember us always in your prayers. Thank you, Sayyidina.
Thank you very much. And please pray for me too.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. So, guys, on that note, His Grace Bishop Daniel mentioned that the house of the evil person will be overthrown. How is that? If we wish for that, we know that God is just, and in His justice, the house of evil will be overthrown. Is it up to us then to say, we will do God's will and we will overthrow the house of the evil. Mark?
No, I don't think that's what His grace is referring to. His grace is referring to the wrath of God, which of course, will preclude any evil person. But I think we have to remember something that kind of hit me, that really didn't hit me at the beginning, but it sort of hit me now, and that these people feel that they're doing God a service. Okay, yes, they are extremists, but they truly believe that what they're doing is the right thing, and that's what drives them to do it. And as surreal as that is, I think that's what needs to drive us to understand forgiveness. We have to come, obviously, as say in the, he ended with forgiveness, and it has to be love and it has to be forgiveness at the end. And I think that as hard as it may be and as soon as it may be, I think love covers, we know that as Christians, love covers a multitude of sins. Mm. And we need to understand why. At first, of course, I couldn't understand why, especially when I heard that it was mostly women and children.
That's right.
That affected me severely. It really did. But I think we need to understand that vengeance is the Lord's. It's not ours. And God will... As Christians, I think it's very important that we come to terms with our forgiveness to others, to those that want to do us harm. I think that's very important.
From President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, that the bomber was a 22-year-old. He's been identified, and if we can get the photo up, please. If we can, he's been identified as Mahmoud Shafi Muhammad Mustafa, a 22-year-old, born in 1994. Let me ask you, what kind of hate, or is it a sickness, a disease that makes someone at such a young age, when their whole life is ahead of them, makes them want to not only take their own life, but take the lives of others? Mena, please.
I think it is. I think at the end of the day, as Mark so eloquently said, these people think they're doing it in the service of greater things, and so in a way you can't help but wonder, what was that person's mindset? What were they thinking, and what they were thinking in the final moments of that horrible event and carrying it out is nothing in comparison to the amount of the amount of brainwashing that a person would have had prior to that. And so a person that's brainwashed, as the name suggests, is not acting in their right state of mind. I'm not trying to mitigate at all what this person's done. I'm not trying to, lessen or give any allowances. But you do have to ask yourself, what was going through that person's mind? And sadly, it was the harm of others, but in the service of greater things.
It's quite unfortunate. Putting it that way makes it very clear and very surreal. It's quite unfortunate that in this day and age there can be individuals who are inclined to do such things. One of the things I was thinking about during the whole ordeal is, okay, so you've committed to doing this thing, and you're doing it in the service of God, and that's what you truly believe. But you walk or run into the church and you see women and children and innocent people just standing there, and you walk into church. We know stories of saints that have walked into church and have changed from their evil deeds. I just find it unbelievable that setting, the church setting that we find so peaceful, that we come to. It's our ark. Even in our daily lives, we have the grind, and we want to come to church on Sunday, and it's our ark. It's our salvation. I just can't fathom that he still, went through with pushing the button. For me, that was unbelievable.
Okay, guys, if I can just interrupt you for a second, we have a caller from Daniel. Daniel, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi. My question is, how many people passed away in these attacks? Some reports on the internet, so mostly like for example, 7 News, Channel 7, all those popular news outlets say that 25 or 24 people have passed away in these attacks, but only 23 names of the martyrs have been released. So what is the actual number of those people that have died in those attacks?
What we know so far is that there were 24 killed, or 24 killed in the initial attack. But since then, a few others have died. What we have, the number that we have confirmed so far up until now, is 25 dead and 53 injured. So there was at least one that passed away after the attack from injuries.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Mark, if I can actually just go back to your point, we were warned about this. In the Gospel of St. John, chapter 16, the time is coming when anyone who kills you will think that they are offering God a service.
I mean, at the time, I think St. Paul was talking primarily of the Jews, but I think it's very relevant. It's extremely relevant today, and it'll be extremely relevant for the future. Our church is built on the blood of the martyrs. Like we are brought up, in Sunday school to be that vigilant about our faith and to know that we're ready to put our lives down. We're ready to lay our lives down for our Lord Jesus Christ. Through all, that's how we are. That's how we Orthodox Christians are, and that's what our church is built on. And at the end of the day, I think Bishop Daniel, touched on this a lot. And he said, our life is temporary. We're living in a tent. We might be living in big houses. We might be living in nice mansions or or brick homes, and we live our lives every day, and we become complacent.
I was actually out with a few of my friends at a cafe, and I just remember looking down at my phone and seeing, bomb went off Cairo, and then for some reason immediately it took me to the in my head I went straight to what had happened only hours earlier in Turkey. Mm-hmm. And I remember sort of trying to draw a connection there, but I thought a bombing outside a church, or a bombing church, I did hope for the best in the way of casualties not being as bad as it turned out to be. But that for me was, I guess, a stage of no, it can't be. I mean, we've gone past that stage. We had our tragedies in Egypt. We had our horrible 2011 with Knesset al-Qaddasin in the beginning of the year. And I thought, no, we've got a new beginning. We've turned a new page in Egypt, and this has to be a storm in a teacup. Whereas, unfortunately, to my surprise, it ended up being worse than Knesset al-Qaddasin in the way of the death toll. So, yeah, that for me really hit home.
Thank you, Mena. And we have actually another caller on the line. Caller, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking that although these people do what they do, and we need to remember they're the ones that God's asked, they want to repent in the end for God. We need to remember that we're not the judges, and I think also this is a test for Christians everywhere to really show Christ's love and Christ's humanity and compassion, even for those who don't love Christ back, or even the sinners. And I think also it's kind of like a test for us that we're going through. So we can say what's going through the minds of these people, but at the same time we need to also look at ourselves and remember this is our test as well.
Thank you, caller. That's actually a very good point. So we crave martyrdom, right? The Orthodox Church is known as the suffering church, or the Church of Martyrs. We crave it, yet when we are presented with it, we shy away, we get scared, our humanity takes over. Mark?
Our humanity certainly takes over, and our will takes over, mm-hmm. And we don't think about the will of God, and we don't think about our eternity. And I think for the people in Egypt, I think there's a major disconnect socially with us here and with the way their lives are, and I think that's a great point. It's a great point. We tend to shy away from martyrdom in the face of persecution at work, maybe, in the face of persecution on the street, in the face of anything. Whereas over there, they have this extreme faith. It is so solid, and it's amazing. I mean, you know, one of the youth that was speaking, was one of the many videos that I saw today, was speaking in the street, and they were asking him his opinion on what's going on. He said, I don't know and I don't care. All I know is I'm willing and ready to lay down my life. I'm willing to shed my blood for my faith, for my Lord Jesus Christ. If we're next, so be it. And for me, that made me stop and think, what are we doing? What are we really doing here? And, you know, how are we living our lives? They are an amazing example for us. They are. And exactly like the caller said, it's a wake-up call for Christians all around the world, especially in the West.
Thanks, Mark. And just on that, actually, just looking through Facebook feed, and that's where we get our news these days. I went through and I've noticed that a few of the youth here in Sydney have extended family that have passed away, that were martyred as part of this event. I guess it brings it home that these are real people with real families, and all of a sudden they're not here. It's not even that they were sick and you had a chance to say goodbye to them, or some were little children. And how does one reconcile that? Mena, if you can help us out with this one. We were supposed to catch up afterwards, and we were going to visit such and such, and you know the next day we were going to go to such and such a place. All of a sudden, that's not there.
It's such a huge thing to reconcile, and it's I think the only link we have to reconciling it is with God. You know, it's something so hard to carry that you know that you can't. I mean, I'm genuinely trying to think how you would function after. I mean, that gentleman who lost his entire family. I saw a horrible, very, very hard picture to look at. Him clutching his newborn baby and his wife, who were both sort of wrapped up. You know, their bodies. Yeah, the only thing you could rely on after that is your relationship with God, and it can't. No human answer, no earthly answer can offer a solution. So, and as for you know the surprise of it all, you know the only thing you can do is just expect and be ready and I mean not even talking sort of I guess religiously, but practically. Never go to bed upset with anyone. You know, never try as often as you can to express your love, because before you know it, it may be too late. You won't get that opportunity to.
Yeah, you're right. I guess Mark, you've been to Cairo.
Yes,
you've prayed at that exact church.
Yes.
Or you've prayed in the cathedral. What was your reaction when you saw that this was the church that was targeted, and this could well have been you on your way walking into the cathedral or walking into this church?
Well, to be honest, at first I was in complete denial. I mean, as Mena was saying, as you were saying, Kim, as well, we get our news from our Facebook feed. When I first saw it, I didn't want to believe it. I actually, when I saw bomb in church, I didn't want to put the two together. I wanted to maybe say it was a car bomb or something like that. And then my dad started talking about it, and then you know, it started becoming a lot more real, and then, you know, the information started flowing. And I thought to myself, how many of us go to church on Sunday and pray and don't think anything of it at all? And I'm sure that these parishioners were exactly the same. They were going to church on a Sunday morning. It's a very joyful event in Egypt. You actually walk to church, and you get to church, and church in Egypt, if you've ever been to church in Egypt, is amazing, you know. And they're just praying. But now that I think about it, of the most holiest moments, like you mentioned at the beginning, the time where you're the closest to God, the time where you're absolutely trying to lift your heart up to God, to heaven, and He decides, I want you now, come to me. Mm-hmm. And to me, that was the most beautiful thought that I could think of to help me sort of not just heal, but to help me come to terms with what had happened. Yeah.
And let me ask you, do you have family? Have you gotten in touch with them to make sure that they're okay?
Yeah, I mean, my family's a bit far away from there. I know where they pray, and I know what church they go to. But obviously the first thought that comes to your mind is, you know, are the people over there okay? Is my family okay? were there people there that maybe I knew? And yes, it's a thought that comes to you, and you know, it hovers, you know, over you, and of course you think about it, and you know, it does affect you as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What about yourself, Mena?
I I don't have much family in Egypt, but of the very few that I have, I did have my mum's auntie over there, and thankfully have confirmed that she's okay.
Okay, that's good. We are trying to get a hold of His Grace Bishop Suriel, who is in Egypt at the moment. So just while we do that, our dear viewers, if we can go to a quick break, please, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Thank you. Talk to you soon. Welcome back to Politically Correct on CYC, where we're covering the events that have happened in Egypt, as well as reactions from some of our fathers and some of our youth. We're very privileged to have with us on the phone, live from Cairo, Egypt, His Grace Bishop Suriel, Bishop of the Diocese of Melbourne and affiliated regions. Hello, Your Grace, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
Thank you, Your Grace, and thank you so much for making time. I know you're in hospital at the moment visiting one of the patients. Your Grace, we want the youth of Sydney and the youth of Melbourne, youth of Australia want to hear from you. We've read the article that you've written regarding what you found when you were in Egypt and when you went to the scene.
Yes.
Can you please describe that scene to us?
It's very difficult to describe actually, because I just become very emotional and I can't hold back my tears at the pain and suffering that I have seen. The amount of damage that has happened to the church. I actually just came out of the church again now and just looked very carefully at everything, and it is actually quite shocking, the extent and the power of this bomb, that it even reached even though it was at the back right-hand side of the church as you enter, where it exploded, yet it has affected all of the church, even right to the front to where the altar and where the baptistry is, and you can see the steel ball bearings damaging all over the church. The roof was damaged. It is a miracle that roof didn't actually collapse on the parishioners, and also all of the windows have been blown out. To see tissues of the martyrs plastered on the walls, it is just unbearable. And now it is very emotional for me. There is many injured. I'm in the hospital. I'm just trying to visit, hear people's stories. I'm videotaping all of this, recording it so that it will be available later. But it is a very, very deeply draining emotional experience. But we know that even in the midst of all of this, that our Lord exists. He is the light of the world, and He will continue to protect His people and His church. And He has said that the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it.
Thank you, Your Grace. Your Grace, just on the bomb itself, we've heard a couple of different stories. One that there was a bomb in a lady's handbag, and one that there was the actual suicide bomber, which is what we've heard recently. What have you heard from your side?
No. President Sisi made it very clear yesterday that it was the bomber it was a belt that was wrapped around his waist, and he exploded it inside of the church as soon as he got in.
And the fact that he went over to the ladies' side, that's targeting the weak and vulnerable, isn't it?
Well, I can't really get into the mind of a terrorist like this, but why he stood on that side, maybe it was that he entered through the right door, and that was closest to the female. That could be the case.
Edna, Mena Goubran, with you, I just wanted to really express to Your Grace that while we all feel extremely helpless here in Australia and we want to do something, anything, it does us incredibly proud, more proud than we can ever express, that one of our beloved in Your Grace is there, not just consoling the families, but is indeed representing us and is healing helping heal many of the deep wounds that must be in the places where your grace is now.
How could I not do this? These are my brothers and sisters that have been affected. How can I not be with them? I have to be amongst them. These are my people.
Your Grace,
They're my flesh and blood.
Your Grace, what do you say to someone who's been injured, who's lost a father or a mother? What do you say to that person who's suffering?
Sorry, again?
What do you say to that person who's been injured or who's lost an arm or a leg or who's lost their father, their mother, their sister? What do you say to them?
I try to comfort them. I give them a word of peace and hope. Even one elderly lady that I visited says to me, even though that she's injured, saying to me, I forgive them, may the Lord forgive them. This is our Christian lofty high principle that we teach to the whole world.
And Sayyidina,
so I'm learning from them.
You're right. Sayyidina, in terms of the security situation in Egypt and for the rest of the churches, what have you seen in terms of a response from the government or from the authorities? Are our churches safe?
Well, there seems to be a lot of security around the cathedral. As I was entering now, there's many dignitaries. There's many dignitaries visit His Holiness, give their condolences, and I think that they are trying to strengthen the security around all of our churches throughout Egypt.
Thank you.
Any other quick questions I can answer, but I will have to go very soon.
Just one last one, Your Grace. Go ahead, Mena.
Just very quickly, Your Grace, what, if anything, can we here in Australia do to assist in the efforts there?
Our weapon is prayer and fast. This is our weapon. This is the strongest weapon that we have. To continue to pray for Egypt, to pray for all of Egypt, both Christians and Muslims, how they can live together in peace and harmony. And we know that prayer and fasting move mountains, and this is, I think, what we should be doing now. We need to our knees in front of our Lord, pour our hearts to Him with our tears and with true repentance, and ask Him to protect this nation and to protect all of its people and the Christians here.
Thank you very much, Your Grace. Thank you for your time, and please do pray for the Coptic Church and obviously for those who are suffering here in Sydney as well, who have lost some of their loved ones.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Your Grace, and thank you for being available for us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. It is very, very emotional. You could hear the emotion in Sayyidina's voice. I can't see him, but I'm sure he was very close to tears.
I can only imagine what he's going through, being at the scene. I mean, I saw one of the photos he uploaded of the silver balls that were in the
ball bearings.
The ball bearings that were in the bomb, and now he's describing them, and he's saying that they're all over the church. It's a miracle that, frankly, it's a miracle that not more people were injured and not more people died. And thank God that he was able to be with his children in that sense, and just trying to be in Sayyidina's shoes and trying to imagine what he would be seeing and what he would be hearing and being amongst the victims and listening to their stories. Thank God that our church is so strong and that we have such strong leadership. We have such strong bishops that are able to not just cope with these events, but also comfort the wider congregation. I mean, he's there comforting these people. He himself is affected, and he's there comforting them. It's unbelievable. It's amazing.
I know you were telling me that I haven't had a chance to watch the funeral, but you were telling me that His Holiness, I think Mena, you were telling me that His Holiness Pope Tadros was just standing with his staff, very, very, very affected. These are his people. These are his children, entrusted to him by the Lord, and they're now murdered. They're massacred. As said, His Grace Bishop Suriel was saying the tissues all over the ceiling. How does one reconcile that?
one reconciles it in knowing that their blood, each drop of their blood, is not cheap, and you know the fact that I was tempted. I mean, I put up a not a generic. You know, I feel like, you know, it's beyond useless of putting up anything on Facebook, but I still put up, you know, the obligatory Facebook status. But there's one that came to mind, a verse that came to mind that I really wanted to put up, and that was in Genesis when God said to Cain, "The blood of your brother cries out to me from the ground," and it just made me think, you know, that's one person that had been killed innocently as well. How many? I mean, how much? What do we see? What's God's expression right now? How must He be feeling? Not only was it obviously, you know, His children, but it was done in His house, in the middle of, or not the middle, but as His sacrament was being distributed, or at the finishing of the mass. Yeah. The altar was destroyed. You know, the relic holders were destroyed. Everything. This was not only a church that, like, not to sort of say that there are churches better than other churches, but this church was the one that Pope Carolus, from what I understand, was the one that Pope Carolus used to pray in. It was the one where with that famous picture of Mena in his pose, standing behind Pope Carolus. That's that church. That's the. How must God feel?
It's quite an ancient church. I always see it driving past the cathedral on 6th of October Bridge, as it is called. Just driving past, and you see that church next to the cathedral. And from far away, because of the size of the cathedral, you think this is a tiny church, but walking past it, it's a huge church.
Huge,
12 kilograms of TNT, I think, was what was said, the force of the blast that did that. And, you know, I remember looking at the footage, and the security camera, whatever it was, that took the footage of the explosion must have been quite far, because the church didn't look huge. But you literally see the foundations, the entire building vibrate and shake, and the tiles all came down, and the windows were blown out, and just makes you wonder why. Like the only thing that comes to mind is why.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a violent and uncalled for action. And the way we see it, you know, emotionally, of course, I mean, all things spiritual aside, I think that this has got to be a wake-up call for the world now. I mean, we've been saying for years and years and years, look at the Copts in Egypt. Look at the Copts in Egypt. Look at us. We're being persecuted. We're being tortured. You know, and finally, I think we've made it to the mainstream media here. I think it's that was attributed to the fact that it was a blast, it was a bomb, it was an actual terrorist attack. And it took that extreme act of violence, you know, to wake up the world. And, you know, people need to sort of realise now that this extremist threat is very real, and it's at the doorstep. And politically, you know, the world needs to take action. The world really needs to take some sort of action.
They do. And just on that, guys, we've heard from Bishop Daniel and Bishop Suriel, another one of the bishops who's very close to the hearts and minds of the youth all over the world, especially the English-speaking youth, is Bishop Angelos. And he actually, during the last couple of days, spoke to BBC World regarding these atrocities that have happened, and gave his opinion and his thoughts on the issue. We have a video about that. If we can roll that, please, so we can listen to His Grace Bishop Angelos speaking to BBC World.
Well, I've been speaking to His Grace Bishop Angelos, who is General Bishop of the Coptic Orthodox Church here in the UK. He says the focus now must be to find those responsible.
I think it's too early to think of a motive. What's obvious is, of course, that it was targeted as a church, and there were worshippers there going along as they do on a Sunday. Families, we know that there are particularly women and tragically children have been lost. Our main focus now is on the pastoral ministry to people who have lost loved ones, and also those who are injured. There's been a call for blood donors. Once that has settled, then I think we can think of motive, And I do hope that at that stage there is a robust investigation to determine what happened at whose hand.
Are you in touch with the community in Cairo? If you are, what are they saying to you?
Yes, I am. I just got off the phone with our church headquarters, our cathedral in Cairo, as well as people who are of the congregation there. They're all very shocked, of course. This church is a parish church, but it's historic. It's connected, as has been reported, to the cathedral precincts. It's shocking that something so close to the center of Cairo could actually happen in this way. I think that we haven't seen an explosion in our church since January of 2011. And then, of course, our churches were attacked in August of 2013. But there's a general sense of sorrow, deep sorrow, that such indiscriminate violence could target such innocent people.
This isn't the first attack against Coptic Christians in Egypt. Do you believe the authorities could do more to protect Coptic Christians in Egypt?
I think we see crimes committed everywhere. I don't think it's a matter of protection. I think what is more important is the rule of law and order. And when something like this happens, to find out who the perpetrator is. Otherwise, there is developed a sense of impunity that says, well, this can happen, people go undetected, unchallenged, and others will do it again. So, we've seen horrific acts in Europe. As much as you try to protect, if someone is intent on causing harm and damage and taking lives, they will do so. But it's what happens afterwards in supporting the community and finding who is responsible that's going to make a difference.
Thank you. And that was His Grace Bishop Angelos speaking to BBC World UK, and that footage courtesy of BBC World. So guys, so His Grace Bishop Angelos spoke about a number of things. The thing that struck me the most is that he's asking, how can something like this happen in the center of Cairo? So I've been there. I've been to Cairo, and I've been to visit churches in Cairo, and especially since the revolution, and even a little bit before that, you see metal detectors outside of our churches, and so something that you see is that people walk right past them. They're often not turned on. You can walk right. You can just walk. You can avoid it almost. If you walk right past and it happens to be turned on and it beeps, no one flinches. Or it seems to flinch. Has that been your experience, and what do you think, what needs to happen? Mark, if you can tell us.
Yeah, I mean, not just churches. I mean, it happens in malls as well. You just walk in, you walk past the guy, right. And sometimes he's asleep, and I think there's an element of complacency.
To be fair, I have actually noticed the same thing in Turkey as well, during visiting Turkey, but go ahead.
It must be a Middle Eastern type of thing, but I think there's an element of complacency. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the first time there was a blast inside the church?
Yes.
The last major event that we had was a blast outside the church. Yes. And I think there's a level of complacency, and I think that's the trigger. People coming in did not expect him to happen, for him to do that. And I think also it happened very suddenly. I mean, if you have a look at the security footage, I had a look at it a couple of times. It was very rapid. I think if you calculate the amount of time it took him to walk across the street and the amount of time from when the bomb went off, I think you can sort of deduce that he ran that last couple of meters. He must have just run in and just done it really, really quickly. And I think it was run of the mill. It was complacency, not taking security seriously, and people just didn't see that it was actually going to happen, that it could happen. No one could fathom that.
Mena, let me ask you something. Can this happen anywhere, or is this just the Middle East?
No, certainly. Well, we've had our taste of that type of terror here in Australia, in Sydney. It can, but I guess in my own opinion, it's divided into two sectors. The sector of we can control, and we've already highlighted that. and the sector of what the government can control. And in terms of what the government and law enforcement can control, it requires. I mean, it's funny. It's funny that this, the sad irony that it would happen to our community when we've got one of the greatest treasures in Australia of Nick Caldas, who happens to be one of us, and the man's gone to Lebanon. I think he investigated I can't remember the exact year.
To the Hague, I believe, in the United Nations.
To the Hague in the United Nations, yeah, exactly. So he's gone to the to those greater things. But while he was still the deputy commissioner, he went to Lebanon to investigate the Hariri assassination.
Yes, that's right.
And so, it needs us to sort of invest more in our governments to perform our civic duties in getting in the right people who will do these things. And in Egypt, I think we've done a very good job in Abdel Fattah Sisi. We all banded behind someone who we knew would have our best interests at heart. And I mean, he's given the Coptic community his ear, and which is almost unprecedented. Mm-hmm. And here in Australia, we also need to sort of try and take our national security seriously, and allow the people who take it seriously as well to represent us in the Parliament.
And Mark, just on that, seeing the image of the President of Egypt standing next to His Holiness, and both saying that this will not divide us, this will not deteriorate the fabric of our community. Do people take that seriously, especially at this time when they're still hurting, or do you think this is what they want to hear?
I think you'll have your cynics.
Mm-hmm.
You're definitely going to have your cynics. I think seeing that today, and not just today, seeing it at the time of the revolution, mm-hmm. when Morsi was overthrown, and seeing the Pope there, and seeing the support, and seeing, actually even going back, touching on that, and going back, seeing Abdel Fattah Sisi coming in to the cathedral. I think that was the first time that a president has come in during the feast, and that was. I mean, the unity is there. I think Abdel Fattah Sisi has put the foundation. Now we need to grow that unity. The other thing that I saw today that was amazing as well was there was a mosque and a church opposite each other, and they put the flag across, the Egyptian flag across, and that must have reinforced the unity. Unity, I think, is the most important thing. It's what's going to, I think, keep the integrity of the investigation going, and I think that love and unity is going to prevail. It will always prevail.
That's right. And just on the unity aspect, the media in Egypt have covered this quite extensively. Mena, I know you've watched a bit of it. What did you see? What did you notice?
Yeah, I remember just yesterday I was watching an interview with of Amr Adib's show. I don't know what it's called these days, but it was him opening up, very, very serious, very somber, holding a girl's scrunchie in his hand, hair scrunchie, hairband, and he said, "Who does this?" He was incredibly, it was hard not to be affected by him, who in turn was affected by the events. And I remember he even said, "It smells of blood. Someone gave this to me and begged me to put it on the air today." And I can't. This isn't the Egypt that I know and love, and it's true. We've the media have for the most part done a great job at representing the Copts and representing their fellow Egyptians, and I've been touched as well to see that throughout the different clips that are available on Facebook, to see people of different faiths, Muslim, and other backgrounds expressing their deepest gratitude and sympathies rather for what had happened. Yeah.
It's definitely very touching. I've seen Amr Adib's shows, and he's very strong. But Mark, let me ask you, in terms of how this happened. In your opinion, and we still don't know the background behind this bomber, Mahmoud Shafiq Mohammed Mustafa. Yeah. if you were to hypothesize, is this a foreign insurgency, or is this something foreign, someone who's been brought in to do this, or do you think there's a fringe element, or there is an element from within who is disaffected?
Look, Kamal, I think there's definitely a fringe element in there. I don't think it would be foreign. I don't think it's foreign influenced. I don't think there's a need for it to be foreign influenced, unfortunately, to say that. But there's quite a few, extremist fringe groups in Egypt already operating, and unfortunately, they were able to convince this young person that this is the right thing to do. And you can say this over and over, and I've said it at the beginning of the show, and I'll continue to say it, and it's not going to take away from the veracity of the situation. But unfortunately, that's the reality. The reality is he believed he was doing something for God, for good, and I think that's the main influence here. I mean, that's how it happened. The reason it happened is because of extremism. Why it happened is because extremists enable these people, by providing them, a good path, so to speak. This is a path. It's a good path. Please take it and follow it. And they believe right in their heart that this is the best thing to do, and they go and they commit these atrocities. And yeah.
So then, let me ask you: if this threat is out there in the world, what can we do? Mena, what if you were in the authorities' shoes at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay? What can they do really? They're fighting a war against these extremists already in Sinai.
Yeah.
They attack the police, at the same time or around the same time. How can they? What else can they do?
Well, a couple of things. Firstly of all, you look at Australia and you see the amount of efforts and lengths they've gone to give their security agencies like ASIO a great deal of power, and it's that power has been manifest both legislatively in what they can do, and in the way of expenditure, and the government has done a great deal in those two regards to protect its citizens. They've got that Dobin, a terrorist hotline, that 24-hour hotline. If you see the signs and report them, and those reports are acted upon, then you could avert a lot of disasters. I wanted to sort of add to what Mark said, in that Hamas condemned these
attack,
these actions, and for Hamas to do that, I think you're saying something. For Hamas to condemn anything terror related is quite telling. So, yeah.
Okay. And Mark, in terms of what can we do as Copts in Australia? How can we come to grips with this? How can we move on? Do we let it affect us? In what way? What do you suggest?
Well, I suggest that we pray. I think we need to pray for the people, for our brothers and sisters in Egypt. And we need to, as I said at the beginning, we need to close this disconnect that we have in our spiritual life. And we have to remember that, our Lord, gave us, commandments to abide, with everyone and to love everyone and to love our enemies. So we need to come to terms with that. If we don't come to terms with that, I don't think we'll ever get over this. That's one thing. I think the other thing that we sort of need to think about as well is that this happened to real people. This is not something that's happened abroad or something that's far away from us. These happened to our brothers and sisters in Egypt. So we need to commit ourselves to, helping them as much as we can. Whether it's, it's aid. Of course, the most important thing is praying for them, of course. We need to, sort of get up and really, help these people in any way, shape or form, in any way we can. We need to reach out our hands and, and make them as well be aware that, your brothers and sisters outside of Egypt, we're thinking of you, we're here. And I think there's, we're doing amazing work, through, groups like Coptic Orphans and other organisations that are doing amazing work in Egypt. And that's the connect that we need to, improve on, we need to build on in order to, to help these people, get over these kind of things. And for sure, we need to put pressure on our own governments to be more aware of this stuff. Aside from, the spiritual side, we need to also put a lot of pressure on the governments here to make them aware of these atrocities And I think I'll touch on what Mena's saying. I think extremism in itself, I don't think there's a lot of people that understand that it is an actual viable threat. And now they need to understand that, and they need to, governments need to stamp this kind of thing out. They need to stamp extremism out. That's what's going to help the most in Egypt, and some sort of reform, with regards to extremism that has to happen.
And as the President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the last time that something like this happened, he came out and said, the only way we can address this is to acknowledge that it exists.
Yes.
To acknowledge we have a problem, let's fix it. We have a problem, let's talk about it.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's have that conversation.
Yes,
right.
yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Mena, I guess any final words before we wrap up?
Well, yes. I mean, just one. I'd sort of one of my favourite characters in history, not necessarily because of who he was, but more so for the things he said, was Charles I of England. And on the day of his execution, paraphrasing very badly, but he said sort of words to the effect to the executioner. So he addressed the man who killed him, who was there to kill him, by saying, "Don't be upset. Don't be upset for what you're about to do to your king. For I go from a corruptible to an incorruptible crown, where no disturbance can be, no disturbance in the world." And it's true. I mean, you could only pray for a state of readiness such as that they were in. And I mean, I know it's very hard to reconcile the feelings that we feel with the reality of it. That is that they're in heaven now. They're praying for us.
Thank you, Mena, and thank you, Mark. And as you said, they are in heaven now, and they are praying for us. I think that's the thing that we can take consolation from. It's very hard. It's a very hard reality to come to. But if we can acknowledge that, and if we can remember that when we are feeling hurt, when we are feeling angry, when we start resenting, we remember that they, as hard as it was and as painful as it was, they were given the crown of martyrdom. Something that we strive for, something that in our life, we strive to be martyrs every day. They've been given the heavenly crown of martyrdom. On behalf of CYC, I'd like to thank the fathers who were able to join us by phone today. I'd like to thank our guests. I'd like to thank Mark and Mena on our panel today, and we are hoping to have a political show up and running on a more regular basis to discuss some of these things and to talk about it and to encourage our youth to get involved in politics. We ask you, our dear audience, please pray for Egypt. Pray for the Copts of Egypt. Pray for the world that it may heal. We thank you for being with us on today's show. I would like to remind you that we have another show on Thursday evening, Sydney time, Ask, where this week we will also discuss the events of this week in Cairo, any developments that may have happened until then. It is an open forum, so you are encouraged to call in, and we'll have our guest speaker with us, Monica Tadros. It's at 9 p.m. Sydney time this Thursday. In the meantime, thank you for joining us on CYC. Good night, and please pray for Egypt.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.